I think all of us, after reading this chapter of My Hero Academia, feel a little bit dumb for not connecting the dots that Shigaraki Tomura, the name Shigaraki, is in fact the last name of All For One. It's such an amazing reveal. It's so simplistic. It's so obvious, but I think so many of us missed it because of just how obvious it was. But it really just nails in how All For One was, or who he was for Shigaraki, and how he went out of his way to slowly corrupt this grandson of Nana, and eventually use Shigaraki against All Might, eventually in a battle. There's just so many, subtleties there that has built up for a very long time, and I just truly love that reveal, because it's a great way to just reveal All For One's character, a little bit more about him, at least what his last name was, and then finding out that he gave it to Shigaraki Tomura, which will now carry on his legacy, because that's technically what a name means. When you're given a name, especially by someone that is of power, and they're like, you will now hold my name, it's basically him saying, you will be my legacy, you will be someone that will surpass me, you will be someone that carries on my name, my will, for you could eventually become something that's even greater than I am. And so I just love that moment. There's so much meaning there, and I feel like just the planning behind that was just absolutely amazing. But it doesn't just stop there. This chapter has so many things to it that I don't even know where to begin. Like, let's just talk about the evil of All For One and what he did to Shigaraki, because it's once again very subtle. It's subtle manipulation, and it's something that you could easily overlook and not really even notice while reading this chapter, because it's, like I said, it's subtle. And let's get right into it. So, when you look at the chapter, Hyodoro Shigaraki, obviously, we know what's happened to him. We know that he is someone that has recently ended his entire family, and we know now why he is like he is, how his quirk activated, etc. And we saw how he was wandering through the street and nobody found him, which I'll talk about that in a second. But the point is that when he's finally found by the one individual, it's the one person you would least expect to save a lost child, and that is the ultimate evil, the ultimate villain, which is All For One. Now, All For One saving him, you would think, be like, whoa, like, this is crazy and all that, and when you look at it just on the surface, it seems like it's a blessing, in a way. He did save Shigaraki, and he did technically save him. Shigaraki might have died out there on the streets if he never had All For One pop up like he did. But there's a lot of things that could have or should have happened, but the point is that he did wind up in All For One's hands. And the thing is that when you look at how he talks to Shigaraki, right off at the start, he actually tries to be his teacher. He is teaching him without giving him the answer, which is what All Might said a long time ago to Izuku. He's like, I couldn't be a good teacher if I just gave you the answer. You have to figure it out on your own. And that's basically what was going on there. And you can see where All For One was slowly building up Shigaraki's destructive nature through different little subtle means he was doing. Like, for instance, giving the hands to Shigaraki was something that was relatively important. It was very important for a couple of reasons. Number one, it was there to constantly remind Shigaraki that he cannot run away from his past, which is in some ways a good thing, because you shouldn't run away from your past, but the way he was doing it was that you must always be reminded of the monster you are. That's kind of what All For One did. Giving Shigaraki those hands basically gave him that feeling, even if it was subconscious. He's like, you are a monster that, ended your entire family, and you must carry on these emotions, this hatred within you, what you did to them for the rest of your life. And he had these emotions just constantly attached to him, and obviously that is not healthy for a child, especially at a child his age. He's at the age to where his entire mentality, what he will become, is really kind of formed in the early stages of life, or at the ages of 1 through, let's say, 8 to 10, that's when you really become the person you are meant to be. And so, because of that, what All For One was doing, surrounding him around these things that was obviously leading him down a direction of just being a villain, you could just see the subtle manipulation. Because he looks at Shigaraki from on top of the roof, and he's like, he's restrained right now, but he's also holding back. And you could see by the way he was doing that, was that he was trying to make Shigaraki let go. Trying to make Shigaraki to give up on holding back. To allow himself to, you know, use his power anytime he wants. That's what he was kind of trying to coax Shigaraki into doing. Which, in some ways, you think is a good thing, because if there's one thing we have learnt from this arc, My Villain Academia arc, is that we have seen what happens to individuals that are shoved down in society and are not allowed to be who they really are. For instance, Toga. When you think about Toga, good example. She was someone that obviously was fascinated by blood. She was drawn to it. It's because of her quirk. It literally made her attached to blood and love it. And eventually led to her condition because she constantly had to put on this mask, and eventually she broke, and then she caused a lot of problems, and then became a villain. It's kind of like what, you know, All For One was doing. He was basically telling Shigaraki, you don't need to limit yourself, you don't need to restrain yourself because of society, you need to be able to just let loose, let yourself be who you really are, and just change the world to what you want. That's basically what he was doing the entire time, building up these emotions within Shigaraki, and it's such an amazing way to depict a villain, because it is something that we really have not got to see really at all from All For One, which is something that All Might was even talking about himself. If you remember with the All For One versus One For All, you know, All Might fight, you have it to where All Might states to All For One, like, you are a manipulator. You manipulate people and you rip them apart and all that for your own amusement and toss them away. You know, All Might stated this, and we never truly seen, you know, All For One actually do that. We've seen that from his own emotions, that he did care about his subordinates. He was upset when, you know, All Might took him down, but we didn't really know if he truly was a master manipulator, at least, you know, manipulating people's emotions. And you could see clearly someone that he looks at as his own son, because he called him Shigaraki, manipulate him to the point to where he would become his successor. So, we can see that the ultimate evil was technically manipulated to be what he is. The question is, will he be able to unshackle himself from his mentor, is the question. Because that, I think, is going to be the final step for Shigaraki to become his own man. I feel like something like that's probably going to happen. But, okay. Let's talk about the beginning of the chapter, which is him walking through the streets and having no help whatsoever. This, honestly, this hurts, because it actually is real. Like, not the essence of quirks and stuff, but what Shigaraki had to go through at the beginning of the chapter, when after what happened to his family, and when he's wandering throughout the streets, he is still in a state of confusion. He was still a little boy that could, in some ways, he would be messed up for the rest of his life, but he could have, in some cases, been saved. There was still a very slim possibility in that moment that he could have been saved by a hero. But he wasn't, obviously, which led to what we have seen throughout this story. But anyways, nobody saved him, which makes a lot of sense, really, because that is something that has actually happened in modern day society, our society. I have actually seen videos and I've seen discussions and stuff on it to where you have individuals around the world that get injured or they're hit by a car or something, and people just walk on by and they don't even do nothing. Someone's just sitting there like bleeding out on the side of the, you know, the street, and everybody just looks at them and just walks on past, not even caring or whatever. Someone's basically gasping in pain. This is something that actually happens in real life. It does happen. So what happened to Shigaraki isn't really that much of a stretch. It honestly makes even more sense when you think about the society they are in, because it reinforces the fact that you're not allowed to use your quirk unless you're a hero. So if anyone had a quirk that could be a healer, you can't necessarily use it because you can face legal trouble and go to prison or jail, etc. So nobody wants to intervene because they're not technically allowed. That's the big part there. But on top of that, there's so many heroes, people would assume a hero would notice this small boy that's injured like he is. But because of how society is structured in this verse, it made it to where there was a situation where a little boy was on the small end of problems compared to everything else. Like, let's look at it. Let's look at everything we have seen throughout this story, okay? If we're comparing, let's say, All Might and All for One's fight to a small little boy on the street that just did something horrific to his family, yes, it's horrific, but when you compare the scale of things, you would obviously say it's more important to send all the heroes to the battle with All for One and All Might. That's what you would assume would be way more important. However, because of that thought, that mentality, it led to Shigaraki becoming one of the scariest entities in the entire world, because he will become the ultimate villain. So it kind of says a lot there. Sometimes kicking a pebble down the road that's very insignificant could turn into a massive boulder if you leave it be too long enough, and that's what happened. Because of the heroes not intervening and doing anything whatsoever, or even citizens having common decency, it led to the problem that Shigaraki has become and will become in the future. So, yeah, I do like that little subtle build-up with the beginning of this chapter, just showing that if maybe one person stepped in, it might not have been much of an issue. It's not to say that Shigaraki might not have become a villain, but he might not be as bad as he is right now. He might not have ever have met All for One if a hero did step in. There was just so many question marks, or different paths that he could have took if someone really just did step in. Now, speaking of other little things that some might have missed, I want to point out that All for One gave Shigaraki a new set of hands, which explains all of the hands that is constantly on Shigaraki's body. We knew that his family was on him, but we didn't know what the other hands were, which we come to find out it's the individuals that he personally went out of his way to end, which was the thugs, and they were also put on him. But then you see to where someone like All for One, he's like, I threw in an extra hand for you. And this extra hand doesn't get any clarification whatsoever in this chapter. There's no clarification to where it came from, but we as individuals know that obviously it had to come from someone. It's not just a fake hand created, so we know it came from someone. So the question is, who? There's a lot of ways you could look at this. You could say it could be Nana. Nana makes a lot of sense, because when you think about the whole theme of what this arc is about, and what we've seen from, Shigaraki's backstory, it would make sense that the one hand on the back of Shigaraki's head, which you even see at the end of this chapter, it's not destroyed at all, it's one hand that's kind of left, you could see that it's possible it could be Nana, because we do know that All for One was the one that personally took out Nana. So, we know he might have her body to be able to do stuff like that. It's possible. So you can't really, throw that outside the window and say it's not going to happen, because it's possible, especially putting a hand like Nana on Shigaraki. It would hold so much weight if he eventually revealed to All Might, if All for One revealed to All Might, like, the hand that's on Shigaraki, the back of his head, it's actually Nana's hand. Like, imagine, he could say something like that and really mess with All Might's psyche because of that one line alone. But it could be something else, too. There's a lot of possibility that the hand could be All for One's hand. Think about it. Think about it closely, real quick. We know that All for One does have regenerative capabilities. It's stated. That's why he's kind of been able to live this long. So, it's likely that he could have ripped off his own hand, which meant that when he gave the hand to Shigaraki, it was more of a message, like, I am your family, but I'm your family that you cannot see. I'm always behind you, which the hand being behind Shigaraki's head, where Shigaraki can't necessarily ever really see it, it kind of means a lot. It's kind of like saying All for One is the master manipulator behind the scenes controlling his puppet, and he will always be there behind you. That could be the thing. It could be All for One's hand. I'm just saying. It's a possibility, especially with the position it's in and not knowing anything about it. I'm willing to assume it's All for One or Nana's hand, but I want to think it's actually All for One's hand, because it would make so much more sense if that actually was added to the back of his head for his design reason alone, because it would go along with, master manipulator, but also the hand behind the scene, or, the shadow in the background, whatever. So, anything else really to get into? I guess let's talk about the final section of the chapter, which is Shigaraki destroying the hands on his body, besides the one, obviously, on the back of his head. he pretty much said he no longer needs to be restrained. He no longer needs these little hands on his body to allow him to control his quirk or allow him to kind of control himself. He no longer needs to have limiters. That's kind of what that entire panel meant. He's taken off the limiter of his quirk and he's going in now without stopping. So we're going to see a whole new Shigaraki in terms of power because he's subconsciously been holding back for, you know, a very long time, since the very beginning. So we're probably going to see him really show some destructive capabilities. And on top of that, we're probably going to see a costume change. I mean, I did talk about this in my last chapter review, but it's very more apparent now, especially after this, that with the hands being destroyed, Shigaraki does need a costume change because it would fit his design. I would definitely like to see some form of, like, extension to his outfit right now, but a little bit more dressed up and pizzazz. I don't know, I just do look forward to seeing what design Horikoshi wants to go with for him in the near future. So yeah, I think that's pretty much about it. I mean, we do have Gigan rushing over there. Dabi obviously is very hurt. I wonder what's going on with that, but we'll see. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like. And if you want to get notified for whenever I upload a video, please click the bell icon down below. And with that, Chibi out.